LETTER the 35th of Life in Mexico. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Life in Mexico by Francis Calderón de la Barca. Letter the 35th. Theatre. Portmanteaus. Visitors. Houses of Puebla. Fine arts. Paseo. Don N. Ramos Arispe. Bishop. Cotton factories. Don Esteban Antunano. United States machinery. Accidents. Difficulties. Shipwrecks. Detentions. Wonderful perseverance. La Constancia Mexicana. Hospital. Prison. El Carmen. Paintings. Painted floors. Angels. Cathedral. Gold and Jewels, a Comedy. Bishop's Palace, Want of Masters. Puebla. You will be surprised when I tell you that, notwithstanding our fatigue, we went to the theatre the evening we arrived, and sat through a long and tragical performance in the box of Don A.O. H.O., one of the richest citizens of Puebla, who, hearing of our arrival, instantly came to invite us to his house, where he assured us rooms were prepared for our reception. But being no longer in savage parts, where it is necessary to throw yourself on the hospitality of strangers or to sleep in the open air, we declined his kind offer, and remained in the inn, which is very tolerable, though we do not see it now en beau as we did last year when we were expected there. The theatre is clean and neat, but dull, and we were much more looked at than the actors, for few foreigners, ladies especially, remain here for any length of time, and their appearance is somewhat of a novelty. Our toilette occasioned us no small difficulty, now that we were again in polished cities, for you may imagine the condition of our trunks, which 2 mules had galloped with over 90 leagues of plain and mountain, and which had been opened every night. Such torn gowns, crushed collars, ruined pelerinis! One carpet bag had burst, and discharged its contents of combs, brushes, etc., over a barranca, where some day they may be picked up as Indian antiquities, and sent to the museum to be preserved as a proof that Montezuma's wives brushed their hair. However, by dint of a washerwoman and sundry messages to peluqueros (hairdressers), we were enabled to turn out something like Christian travellers. The first night we could not sleep on account of the innumerable ants, attracted probably by a small garden with 1 or 2 orange trees in it, into which our room opened. The next morning we had a great many visitors, and though there is here a good deal of that provincial pretension one always meets with out of a capital, we found some pleasant people amongst them. The Señora H.O. came in a very handsome carriage with beautiful northern horses, and took us out to see something of the town. Its extreme cleanness after Mexico is remarkable. In that respect it is the Philadelphia of the Republic, with wide streets, well paved, large houses of 2 stories, very solid and well built, magnificent churches, plenty of water, and withal a dullness which makes one feel as if the houses were rows of convents, and all the people, except beggars and a few business men, shut up in performance of a vow. The house of Don A.O. H.O. is, I think, more elegantly furnished than any in Mexico. It is of immense size, and the floors beautifully painted. One large room is furnished with pale blue satin, another with crimson damask, and there are fine inlaid tables, handsome mirrors, and everything in very good taste. He and his wife are both very young, she not more than 19, very delicate and pretty, and very fair, and in her dress, neatness, and house, she reminds me of a Philadelphian, always with the exception of her diamonds and pearls. The ladies smoke more, at least more openly than in Mexico, but they have so few amusements they deserve more indulgence. There are 11 convents of nuns in the city, and taking the veil is as common as being married. We dined at the Señora H.O.'s, found her very amiable, and heard a young lady sing, who has a good voice, but complains that there are no music masters in Puebla. The fine arts, however, are not entirely at a standstill here, and in architecture, sculpture, and painting there is a good deal, comparatively speaking, worthy of notice. There used to be a proverb amongst the Mexicans that if all men had five senses, the Poblanos had seven. They are considered very reserved in their manners, a natural consequence of their having actually no society. Formerly, Puebla rivalled Mexico in population and in industry. The plague which carried off 50,000 persons was followed by the pestilence of civil war, and Puebla dwindled down to a very secondary city. But we now hear a great deal of their cotton factories and of the machines, instruments, and workmen brought from Europe here, already giving employment to 30,000 individuals. In the evening we drove to the new Paseo, a public promenade, where none of the public were to be seen, and which will be pretty when the young trees grow. 19th. C n went out early and returned the visit of the celebrated Don N. Ramos Arizpe, now an old man, and canon of the cathedral, but formerly deputy in the Spanish Cortes, and the most zealous supporter of the cause of independence. It is said that he owed the great influence which he had over men of a middling character rather to his energetic, some say to his domineering disposition, than to genius; that he was clear-headed, active, dexterous, remarkable for discovering hidden springs and secret motives, and always keeping his subordinates zealously employed in his affairs. C n also visited the bishop, Señor Vasques, who obtained from Rome the acknowledgment of independence. We set out after breakfast with several gentlemen who came to take us to the cotton factories, etc. We went first to visit the factory established at the mill of Santo Domingo, a little way out of the city, and called La Constancia Mexicana, Mexican Constancy. It was the first established in the republic, and deserves its name from the great obstacles that were thrown in the way of its construction, and the numerous difficulties that had to be conquered before it came into effect. In 1831 a Junta for the encouragement of public industry was formed, but the obstacles thrown in the way of every proposal were so great that the members all abandoned it in despair, excepting only the Señor Don Esteban Antunano, who was determined himself to establish a manufactory of cotton, to give up his commercial relations, and to employ his whole fortune in attaining this object. He bought the mill of Santo Domingo for $178,000, and began to build the edifice, employing foreign workmen at exorbitant prices. In this he spent so much of his capital that he was obliged to have recourse to the Bank of Avio for assistance. The bank (avio meaning pecuniary assistance or advance of funds) was established by Don Lucas Alaman, and intended as an encouragement to industry. But industry is not of the nature of a hothouse plant, to be forced by artificial means, and these grants of funds have but created monopolies, and consequently added to the general poverty. Machinery to the amount of 3,840 spindles was ordered for Antunano from the United States, and a loan granted him of $178,000, but of which he never received the whole. Meanwhile his project was sneered at as absurd, impossible, ruinous, but firmly resolved not to abandon his enterprise, he contented himself with living with the strictest economy, himself and his numerous family almost suffering from want, and frequently unable to obtain credit for the provisions necessary for their daily use. To hasten the arrival of the machinery, he sent an agent to the north to superintend it, and to hire workmen, but the commercial house to which he was recommended, and which at first gave him the sums he required, lost their confidence in the agent, and redemanded their money, so that he was forced to sell his clothes in order to obtain food and lodging. In July, 1833, the machinery was embarked at Philadelphia, and in August arrived at Vera Cruz, to the care of Señor Paso y Troncoso, who never abandoned Antunano in his adversity, and even lent him unlimited sums, but much delay ensued, and a year elapsed before it reached Puebla. Thus, after it was all set up, the ignorant foreign workmen declared that no good results would ever be obtained, that the machines were bad, and the cotton worse. However, By the month of January, 1833, they began to work in the factory, to which was given the name of Mexican Constancy.